It's me, T.H. Massacre. I am a high-level occultist. I do divination and tarot, and I make beautiful, beautiful art logos. There's a butterfly that's just flown past me. Magic, love it. Look. Absolutely beautiful. The subject I'm going to talk about, not so beautiful, but, this is interesting. I'm going to tell you the story about Floyd. I met Floyd the other day. In fact, I've met Floyd twice now since. Let me tell you about Floyd. So, the other day, and this is all relevant, the backstory and like the prelude to the actual story. Just hang on, just bear with me because everything makes sense. So the other day, I was having a good day, did some meditation, had a job come in which was really nice, very helpful. So I was feeling a bit flush, so I was having a nice relaxing day, doing my thing, going to town, get myself a haircut, and then I was going to head to a little pub and just sit down and do some work like I normally do, grab a non-alcoholic drink and sit there and throw chaos into the cave. And I'm walking to this pub and I see a homeless guy sat next to, like, in a doorway. He's wearing this massive camouflage like jacket. It's pretty cold, by the way. I must point out it's about 7 o'clock in the evening. I'd got my hair cut. The hairdressers was closing, but the guy kindly kind of stayed late for me and gave me a super duper trim. Absolute legend. Anyway, so see this homeless guy. He's got a big black eye, like a proper swollen left eye. And he looks rough, to say the least, right? Like, he's got tattoos on his hands, big cross on his neck, big beard. So he stood right next to a bank. So I was like, do you know what? Fuck this. I've had a really good day. I've earned a lot of money in one day. Like it's not life-changing money, but, you know, nice amount of pentacles. So I draw 20 quid out, hand it to the guy. He's super grateful. He's like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, he's a little bit Oliver Twist, yeah, for those who know what that means. He'd been drinking. He had a bottle of vodka sort of that he was sort of hiding away. But look, I don't care, man. Each to their own, right? If I was homeless like him, I'd be doing all sorts of shit. Guaranteed. Facts. Anyway. So I hand him this money, and he's really grateful. He's like, mate, thank you so much. He was like, I was trying to get back to where I normally stay of an evening. He said, I've come to this town just to see if I could get some money. He said, but the trains are closed. He said, so I've got to stay here. He said, but you know, it is what it is. Now, prior to this, a few weeks ago, I was in quite a bad car accident. My car was like totaled, pretty bad. But, because I'm a magician, manifested myself quite a nice courtesy car. Brand new Range Rover, 55 grand, banging, electric heated seats, the lot. So I say to Floyd, I said, you know what, fuck it. I said, where are you trying to get to? And he tells me the name of the town. It's about half an hour away. I went, bollocks this. I said, I'll take you there now. I said, I've got a brand new courtesy car. So it's got heated seats. It's a Range. I went, come on, jump in. Come with me. Let's go. He couldn't believe it. He started to get, first of all, he was like, no, that's too much. Like, don't be silly. I went, mate, what are you going to do? Sit outside here all night and just sit in the cold? I went, look, I said, I can't help you with a house or anything. Can't make that. I said, but let me give you a lift. So he gets his stuff, he packs his stuff, and We start walking towards the car. He's as happy as Larry. He's like, are you serious? And then he jokes and he says, look, you're not going to kidnap and kill me, are you? So I laughed and went, I held up my hand and I went, no, man. I said, I'm a man of God, man. I said, I would never hurt a fly. And anyway, we start talking. He tells me how rough it is. He says, yeah, I'm really sorry. He said, I've got a drink. He said, I've had a drink. I went, don't worry. I said, all you got to do is sit in the passenger seat, mate. I said, it's all good. And he starts to tell me about his drink problem and how rough his life is. Fucking hell. I mean, I thought I had it tough. This guy, seriously, life has been fucking cruel to him, to say the least. So I tell him, I say, look, I said, don't worry about it. I said, my uncle, he was a homeless guy. He died on the streets under Waterloo Bridge. He had a really bad drink problem. His life fell to pieces. I said, and me too. I said, back in the day, I said, I had a terrible problem with booze and all sorts. Stuff nearly destroyed me, like all that party lifestyle and client entertainment and all that jazz. I said, but I was lucky I was able to kick it. So the thing is, man, I said, in your situation, forgive yourself, mate. I said, look, I'm not saying alcohol's good, it's terrible. I said, but, you know, is what it is, right? You've got to do what you've got to do to survive. And if it's helping you, you know, if it's helping numbing the pain and the trauma, I said, you know, don't beat yourself up over it. I said, but one day you'll kick it. I said, I have a feeling about that. Anyway, we get to the range. I press the button, the electric boot opens. Put the bags in. He's like, this is amazing. He's like, are you sure? I said, yeah, get in. So we get in, put the seats on. Floyd turns around and we're talking about stuff, and he says, I don't do crack. He said, I don't do drugs. I went, don't worry about that, Floyd. I said, I do a lot of cannabis. I said, each their own, everyone has their voice. He said, oh, you like a bit of weed? I said, yeah. He went, let me sort you some out. Now let's just be clear here. I don't advocate the taking of any illegal substances whatsoever. But those who know, roadman weed is always the best. The $5 weed, the £5 weed is always really good. So he goes to give me a bag. It's got about 2 grams in it. I was like, no, I'm not taking it. I said, I'll take a bit of it. He's insisting, no, take it. I was like, no, we're sharing it. I said, have half. I said, tell you what. I said, I'll take half of this weed and that's your petrol money. How's that? That's a fair trade. Deal's done. Fire up the engine and off we go. Big electric screen comes up. Floyd goes, oh, could we play some music? I went, yeah, of course. He went, do you mind if I choose a song? I went, go for it. I said, whatever you want. So we're trying to work it out. I'm not very good at this. We end up he puts on a song, he chooses Ren. So we play it, turn it up, blare it out. He's singing, he knows all the words. And he's getting a bit emotional as well. Like the lyrics, I'm listening to the lyrics in the car going, Jesus, this song is deep, but not just for me, but clearly for Floyd. Like, he's feeling these words, like everything that Ren is saying in this song. And I think the song's called Ren I Am, or something like that. And like, it's hitting him deep. And anyway, after the song, I play him a couple of tunes. I play him some music of similar ilk that he hasn't heard, and he's having a great time. We're both singing, laughing. I'm sitting there going, do you know what? This is like atypical of my life, where I end up in the craziest situations. But I'm someone who like always, yeah, I'm a black cat, man. I land on my feet every time, and I've got more than 9 lives, that's for sure. So I wasn't worried. Anyway, we get talking. I'm talking to Floyd. He's telling me about his life, and I'm not going to share the personal details, but he's had a really rough life. And I turned around to him and I said, the thing is, I said, everyone goes through their trials and tribulations, and I said, the truth of the matter is that most people are innocent. It's not their fault. It's down to karmic family or a system that is just designed to be fucking cruel. I said, and most people, they fall into the kind of, fall by the wayside, or society doesn't quite function for them. I kind of gave him a few examples of myself and that. And he sort of like, you know, he kind of like, he agreed, like he wasn't challenging, like he's a really, really kind of quiet, humble guy. Like super intelligent as well. And he turns around and says, "Do you believe in God?" And I went, "Wow." I said, "That's a deep question." I said, "Yes, I do." I said, "But," it's a big but. I said, "I don't believe in no Abrahamic God." I said, "I don't believe in the God of the Bible, the Christian God or the Jewish God or the Muslim God." I said, I kind of tap into older philosophy and wisdom. And he said, "I wondered that." He said, "I saw the Eye of Horus." He said, "I thought that." I said, "Do you believe in God?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "I do." He said, "I've had things happen in my life that," he said, "no one should ever have to go through, but," he said, "I know I'm here for a purpose." He said, "I know God saves me." He said, "I have miracles happen to me all the time." And I sort of smiled to myself inwardly thinking, this guy has no fucking clue who I am. He has no idea the shit I know. He has no idea like what all these tattoos mean and the deep layered esoteric stuff. But listen, there's a lesson here. Because I didn't know who Floyd was. I really didn't. So Floyd starts to talk about God and he says, "Yeah." He said, "I believe in God." He said, "But I've done some really bad things." I was like, wow. I was like, what have you done? And he said, "Well, I've been into prison." He said, "I've been in and out of prison 3 times. I was like, wow, 3 times, that's serious. I know people who've been in prison. I know people who've been in prison a couple of times. 3 times? So I went, all right. I said, the thing is, I said, not all crimes are kind of like, are justified, right? So some people get locked up for silly things, posting on Twitter and stuff like that. He went, "No, I've done some really bad stuff." I was like, "Go on then." I went, "What's the worst thing you've done?" "Murder," he replies. Fucking hell, Floyd. Murder, Jesus. I went, "Well, look," I said, "I'm a man of God and," I said, "I'm a spiritual man. So I don't believe I should hurt flies. So I don't think murder's right. But," I said, "I'm sure you had your reasons." And he went, "Yeah." He said, "I did. And I stand by it." He said, "I'd do it again." I was like, whoa. He said, I killed a pedophile." Oh. He said, "And this guy," he said, "he was really fucking evil. He hurt a lot of kids." He said, "And I couldn't let that ride." He said, "So I done him in, like badly." He said, I didn't just do him in." He said, "I made him suffer his last breaths." I was like, fucking hell, Floyd. I went, "I tell you what." I said, "You're not a criminal." I said, "You're a fucking hero, mate." And I think it was the last thing that he was expecting me to say. And you could tell that it weighed on him. So I said to him, I went, "Here's the thing." I said, "Let me give you an analogy." Well, not an analogy. I said, let me put it a different way. I said, "Yes, you committed a really bad crime. You took that man's life. And that can't be taken back. That's a final decision, let's be clear." I said, "But how many children do you think you saved from him in the future had he been left alive to live?" Floyd sat there and he thought. He said, "I don't know." He said, "But I know he would have done it again." I said, "Exactly." I said, "Regardless of the law," I said, "the law is written by men, by man, yeah? It's a society law that if you do something like that you go to jail and you're condemned. You're punished for it." I said, "Mate," I said, "if I was in charge, I'd have a statue erected of you in the town. I'd say you're a hero." I'd say that you should be compensated for for what you've done. And you could see that, I could see the clocks, like the cogs kind of turning, yeah. But I wanted to put it in a bit more of a deeper philosophical meaning. So I said to him, so let me give you an example. So imagine you've got a garden. You're in the Garden of Eden. There's Eve. She's naked, looking beautiful, free as anything. You're Adam. You're naked, free as anything. There's beautiful plants. Everything is just perfect, how it's described. I said, and let's imagine that you've also got free roaming children, all free, innocent, without a care in the world. I said, and then along comes the serpent, the snake. Now, you know that this snake within your walled garden is going to be dangerous. You can't leave it. You can't just leave it be and let it roam free. You have two options, I said. You either move it and then it becomes someone else's problem. I said, or the masculine energy, what the man should do in the situation to protect his beloved and his children and everything else, quite frankly, is you kill it. You know it's a threat. You know that even if you get rid of it, it could come back in the night. And it's too dangerous a risk because you can't trust a snake, Floyd. I said, let me put it even another way. I said, back in the ancient times, I'll reference Egypt on this because that's my school of study, yeah. I said, back in ancient Egypt, powerful civilization with beautiful women, gold, abundance, huge temples that were the envy of the rest of the world. I said, in the fallen dynasties in Egypt, they were constantly under attack from other nations. These boats would arrive with trained killers, ready to storm Egypt, to fight over the lands and the gold and to loot the tombs, etc. I said, and these men, they wouldn't just come in and kill the soldiers and then leave everyone alone. No, they would absolutely maim and hurt the women and children too. So these men out in the boats, ready to attack, I said, they're a direct threat to that homeland, correct? Floyd agrees. I said, so what does society do? I said, you get men, you train them to be killers, and you send them out there and they fight to protect their homeland, and most importantly, their women and children too. I said, from that perspective, those men that go out and kill the enemy, they're heroes, are they not? Floyd agrees, they are. I said, you can't hope that these people are going to have a moral conscience and make the right decision and turn around and fuck off. I said, for all the evidence and the actions that they present into you, they're displaying a threat to you, to your people and to your women and children. I said, so here's the thing, here's the deep question. I said, if they do that and they protect their women and children and they kill, I said, are they evil? Are they criminals? Do they go to hell? That's a personal question to each individual, right? I'm not here to tell you the answer to that. I know the answer from my perspective. So Floyd turns around and says, yeah, problem though. He said, I've done more than one. What do you mean done more than one? How many people you killed, Floyd? He won't say, he won't tell me. So now I'm driving along in my range, courtesy car, with a homeless man who's not just confessed to one murder, of a pedophile, but several. And he follows it up. He says they were all pedophiles. He said, listen, he says, I'm not like proud of what I do. What? What do you... He says, I'm not proud of what I do, but he says, he says, I'm in a tough situation, and, he says, if someone lets me know the name of someone and it's proven and it needs to be done, it needs to be done. I stopped for a second and I thought, I raised my hand, I went, shake my fucking hand. I said, I want to shake the hand of a man who's killed multiple paedophiles. I said, you're a fucking hero. I said, no. I said, you're not even a hero. I said, you're an angel. I said, look, Floyd, do you know how many children you've saved by getting rid of these demons? I said, again, I'm not justifying, not condoning what you've done. But you've potentially saved at least a couple of kids, if not more. Lives that would be ruined and destroyed by the actions of these disgusting men. And I meant it. I meant it seriously. I then turned around and said to him, I said, here's the thing, Floyd. I said, I could sit here and judge you. And I don't know your life, and I don't know the details of what these men did or were potentially going to do. So it's not for me to be here and to condemn you and start telling you what you should and shouldn't have done, and you're going to go to hell or what this or that. It's not my decision. I said, but something I do know, Floyd. I said, I believe in the afterlife. I believe in judgment upon death. I believe in the journey of the soul. I've read and studied enough about this stuff to be convicted in it in a beautiful way. So most people aren't, I get that. Most people only follow the orders of society and the rules that are dictated to them. And that's fine. I said, but they're not in charge of the soul. They don't get to judge where you go after, if there is an afterlife. I said, there maybe not. Maybe there isn't heaven and hell, and that's the end of it. Doesn't matter then. But I said, if there is, I said, the ancients believed that your soul was weighed against the feather of Mart. And the way it was judged was the heart would be weighed on a scale, like with a feather. I said, but it's not a real thing, Floyd. I said, it's post-death, it's spiritual, it's allegorical. I said, the goddess Mart, who judges these souls, is a divine protector of women and children. I said, listen, I'm not saying that I know, but I said, I would imagine if I was Mart and you came before me for your soul to be judged and you did this, I would say, yeah, you shouldn't have killed them. But also, thank you, Floyd. Thank you for protecting other women and children, or children particularly, and children that would go on to hopefully have a better chance at life had you not taken actions against the men that were undoubtedly going to destroy other children's lives. I said, more importantly, I said, you avenged the souls of the victims. Our justice system doesn't avenge the souls of the victims. It just locks these predators up for a very short period of time and lets them out again. Like, imagine you catch a snake, you put it in a cage and then you let it out after a few months, hoping it doesn't bite anyone again. Do you know how fucking stupid that is? And people can talk about rehabilitation. Okay, you try and rehabilitate a snake to tell it not to do its nature. Here's the thing. I don't want to live in a garden full of snakes, I said to Floyd. I said, that's just a fact. I said, it's not a garden of Eden then, is it? It's a garden of terror and threat, which is what we live in now. Because these people are protected through life. They're allowed to live and continue, and the taxpayer has to pay to feed these bastards in a prison. Like I said, I know a few people have been inside, and nunces and pedophiles, they get a rough ride. They get really done in. They have to be protected by the prison people. Law-abiding citizens working inside the prison system, protecting these men for their own safety. For what reason? I don't know. But those men inside the nick who do and target these disgusting criminals who hurt children and women, they're heroes too. Absolute heroes. Because just because it's not a formal war, yeah, with boats and armour and shields and swords, because it's not organised by another nation, we're allowed to kill men in that situation and justify it under the command of a king or a prime minister or a president. But you're not allowed to take actions into your own hands and do what is most blatantly and obviously the right thing to do given in a situation. Now, again, I'm not telling or condoning this. But what I'm saying is Floyd's life is made a misery and he suffers for it. And what I'm saying is he shouldn't. Now, I don't want to go into any more details about this story because Floyd told me some amazing, interesting stuff. But it was a profound, let's call it a profound encounter, because like, this is a guy who is torturing himself over his actions with that weight of guilt. And rightly or wrongly, regardless of what you believe, he did society a favour. And I wanted him to know that. I wanted him to have someone, just one person, say, well done, to actually pay pure gratitude. Because, I don't know, maybe one of those men that he oft could have somehow mysteriously ended up in my daughter's lives and done it to them. And there's a lot of these people about. Society has normalised and tolerated this shit for too long. People like Floyd are heroes. Man should not be living on the street, regardless of what he did in the past. Regardless.